Hey guys, it's Generalkidd here. How's everyone doing today? So, for today's video, we're going to be tackling the mystery of the defective flood dispersal pods. So, a long time ago, back in 2009, was that like 11, 12 years ago now? This random thing happened to me where, so how like all the flood dispersal pods drop down and release flood? Well, randomly a pod, while I was doing like the legendary campaign with my friends, a pod just dropped down and just stayed there, didn't explode. And that happened just one time to me on the 360 version. Years later on MCC, it happened again. And, well, both times it just pretty much happened randomly, and I could never actually consistently reproduce it. I've always assumed it was just a totally random bug where the pod comes down and just doesn't deploy. So I kind of jokingly called it a defective flood pod. But, up until now, like I said, I've always thought it was just a random glitch. But, as it turns out, it's actually not random. It does happen for a reason. And there is a way you can actually control that completely, so you can consistently break, quote-unquote, the flood pods. And as you can see here, what I just did, that path I just took, that is the path, that is actually one of the many paths you can take to disable the at least one flood pod when it comes down. So the reason why the pod breaks is it all comes down to your timing, how fast you move to the level, and the path you take. So here, I flew over there, stopped for a second, and I flew all the way up here. And when I did that, it caused a flood pod to come down over here in this location and not break. And if you were to follow that exact same path I just took, and feel free to rewind if you want to see the exact path, every time you take that path, the exact same flood dispersal pod will come down and not deploy anything. So what's happening is, essentially, I don't exactly know like all the under the hood stuff behind the flood pods, but what's most likely happening is you're preventing the flood inside the pod from spawning. Either you're despawning them early, or they're unable to spawn at all because too many other enemies are spawning around the map, and I think there might be like a limit to how many enemies can be in place at once. So as a result, because the flood pod can't spawn anything, it doesn't finish its scripted action. It just drops down and, well, that's it. It can't spawn anything, so it just stays there in place. So that's what I'm pretty sure is happening. Now, I don't know that 100%, but I do at least know that it's not a random bug. It's 100% consistent and can be controlled. And in fact, if you can change your path and timing in certain ways, you can change which pod you break, so to speak. Also, another fun fact, I actually never noticed that the pods actually, when they drop down, they kind of shrink a little bit and squeeze down. So that's the first time I ever saw that. But yeah, so after all these years, it's always just been like something I can never reproduce no matter what. But now, especially with the acrophobia skull, it's really easy to control it now. And you can see that there's so many different paths you can take to get different pods to drop down, and all you have to do is just like follow these paths. And if you tweak the path a little bit, if you tweak the timing a little bit, you could potentially get a different pod. So right now we're going to show you a few different paths that we took, and some of these are very consistent and very common now. So like this one where you fly all the way up to the top, you kill a few enemies and you come back down. Sometimes the pod will drop out here, but sometimes that same path, and I don't know, it could be because the timing varied just a tiny bit, or maybe we killed a few extra enemies or a few less enemies. But a lot of the times, instead of dropping all the way out there, once you do the same path and you fly around to the side here, there will be another pod here that has dropped and not deployed anything. In fact, this particular location is probably the most common we've gotten, aside from the very first one that I showed. The first one and this one seem to be the most consistent methods. But, just basically fly up here, kill a few flood, wait a few seconds, and make your way back down and around the entire building. And once you come around, then that pod, the exact same pod will be there. And this is actually thanks to my friend Photos Chaos that actually found out that these pods can be controlled, so to speak. In fact, what we were doing originally was we were trying to test something else on this mission using the acrophobia skull. And then by accident, he discovered that these, if you take a certain path and certain timing, you can cause these pods to, drop down and not break. So there you guys have it. That is why the flood pods can sometimes be defective and drop down and not deploy any flood and just stay there. I still remember the very first time it happened to me. I'd never seen like a flood dispersal pod up close like that before, so I was so confused as to what it was. But now you guys know. For those of you who have also encountered the same bug, it is not just a random bug. It is actually something that you can indeed control. So hopefully you guys found this video to be interesting, and if you did enjoy it, and as always, make sure to leave a like, leave thoughts and comments, and if you guys want to check out or look into, any questions you have, just let me know. But other than that, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all next time. Bye guys!